So yesterday afternoon, we were notified by an oil company that they were going to be building a road through some pasture we lease. This morning, we saw heavy equipment in the pasture, so we thought we would check on the horses in that pasture. We found that where the equipment had entered the pasture, they had cut the fence in two places. The holes were left wide open with the barbed wire just laying out in the grass. Luckily, the horses were still in the pasture. M, the author's husband, made a not very nice phone call and told them this was unacceptable. They sent someone to temporarily cobble the fence together. Eventually, there will be cattle guards. This evening, we saw that the equipment was on the opposite side of the pasture, so we went to check. This side is an electric fence, one hot wire and one ground wire. Again, the fence was cut. They had cobbled the hot wire back together, but the ground wire was laying on it, arcing in the grass. Luckily, it didn't start a fire as dry as it is. M made another phone call. This time he was hot. About an hour later, we got a phone call asking if we could move the horses until the project is complete. M told them he would move the horses in the morning. A follow-up post to that was, what was it? It was something to the effects of
They went to town.
They went to town and something happened where they had discussed a call with somebody from this organization, and then they said, yeah, just make sure to leave the gates closed. Like, you can move through the gates, just close them behind you or something.
They had cows that would get out on the highway.
Yeah. And so when they returned, like we normally do as ranchers and farmers, we have a sixth sense and we go, there might be a gate open. Let's go check. And sure enough, it was open. And the guy that left them open was the guy that they had made the call to. So I was like, goodness gracious. So I made a post on Facebook and Twitter saying essentially like, hey, anybody in the power industry, because oil is power also. Like, I was like, hey, we appreciate you. We know you do hard work, but for goodness gracious sakes, like, if you have something going on, just have us help you. We have no problem helping you. We appreciate what you do, and we will make your life easier, because ultimately you don't have to cut the fence. You can lay it down and drive over the top of it, and it will negate any repairs and all that stuff. But like,
the first thing that comes to mind to me is you leave things the way you found them. If the gate was open, you leave the gate open. If it's closed, you close it. Therefore, if the fence is there, leave the fence.
I think we had a conversation about that one time too, for hunter etiquette. Like,
oh, right.
The only reason that I would cut somebody's fence is if I couldn't get to a gate and you're trying to get to a fire on their place.
That's what I was going to say, is a fire to either help extinguish it or save livestock.
Yeah.
The only reason. Yeah.
No, I agree.
There may be some others, if you've got some of these people that are so inconsiderate and they're in need of medical help on the other side of a fence, yeah, go ahead and go drive around. Wait for a fence.
Yeah.
For a gate to get through. I mean, that is the epitome of
disrespect.
What we do is more important than you
right.
mere plebes of society.
Well, and the thing is, it doesn't matter that there's going to be a road that comes through and a cattle guard later on. Like, the fact is, there's livestock still there currently. Like, it has to be left. And if I guarantee, if there was a farm kid or a ranch kid in that crew, they would have been like, hey guys, like, it's going to take us 5 minutes to delay going through here. Let's just pull the clips off of a couple of posts and drive over the top and set it back up. It's not that hard.
Right.
Guarantee that would have happened.
And they probably wouldn't have listened to him anyway, because
probably not. They're like, F you, we're going to do it anyway.
Right.
But with the pasture full of horses are looking for something to get hurt with.
Yeah, no, it's true.
And then
cows are looking to get out and horses are looking to get hurt.
They're like a 3-year-old. They're always looking to do something they shouldn't be doing.
Yeah.
And they got nothing but time on their hands to find it.
Yeah.
Do you know how much you're starting to sound like me
now? I know. I heard that, and it scares me a little bit.
Objective completed. Congratulations, Dad. You've moved to the next phase.
That's right. Next thing you know, she'll be dressing like me.
I don't think so.
Doesn't want to be stylish, apparently.
He probably handled it better than I would have, honestly.
Yeah. Well, because he's an easygoing guy.
He is such an easygoing guy. We know these people, and they are such good people.
Yes.
And that was...
I may have been looking to get into a fight, honestly. Be like, all right, Come here. Let me wrap this wire around your neck real quick.
Right.
Right.
I'm just gonna tighten it a little bit.
Oh, wait.
Yeah.
Oh, well, it's not complete without it being tied to a cow or a horse on the other end.
Oh, there we go. Yeah.
Have a great day.
Yeah.
No, this is I
That's
can't believe that. I really just can't.
So unbelievably unacceptable that absolutely no consideration for what anybody else's operation is, only their own.
Well, and it truly is all about the safety of the animals. I mean,
yeah. Well, and like to the thing that we have to deal with, those giant power lines that go through the ranch. We have access gates. They absolutely mean nothing to us. And they're just for the power company to get in. And every once in a while we still got to check because don't know if somebody's driven by, checked the line or something, and then just drove out without closing the gate behind them. Like, come on, guys. Like, just find it the way, like you said, Mom, find it, leave it the way you found it. Goodness gracious.
Yeah.
Well, and part of the problem is what people don't realize is, especially on these power lines, pipelines, whatever they're doing, is those gates aren't just put in there for convenience. They're mandated by that. You have to, and you have to allow them access. So you've got no choice what they do. And that one power line happens to go right through a couple of our pastures. And one of them is a calving
there's
pasture.
two specific access gates, right? The one that goes into the 160 lease.
Wherever that power line crosses a fence,
you have to
have a gate.
So we've got one on the highway west of the house. There's one south of the house as you're heading towards the county road.
Yep.
And there's one off the county road on the south side of the calving pasture.
There's one on the east side of the calving pasture as well.
That's not the east, the west.
Or west, I'm sorry, yeah.
That was the second one I said. And then
but you got another one.
There's also another one up between us and our lease.
But there's one south of where the bullpen is too.
That's right.
Yeah.
Yep.
All so within about a mile.
Yeah.
So that's what, 5-6 different gates?
Yeah.
4, 5, 6. Yeah.
So you got to keep an eye that they're still up and tight. And
then when they go through them, did they put them upright? Did they,
Yeah. Well, the benefit too is we have the open country that we can more or less likely
see it.
We can take some binoculars and look, but I can't imagine some places where, Wyoming or the western part of Montana where it's, mountains and they just got clear cut timber alongside the power lines and they have rolling hills and stuff. They have to go check that. They have to get out and go make sure that every once in a while that gate is actually close.
Yeah.
Well, one of the interesting things about that is a couple of years ago, the same power line that we're talking about, we got some lease ground west of us, and I'm tooting along out there and I look over and there's a great big X on the ground.
Oh, that's
staked down. I'm like, what is this?
X marks
like as in like a bunch of metal pieces?
No,
or?
it was out of
thing.
Yeah, like a big giant tarp that was about 4 foot, 5 foot long by 5 foot long. And I'm trying to figure out, what is this? Who is this? How'd they get in here?
Yeah.
And so I go back and I start looking for tracks and
imagine.
I mean, I would have too.
I found them. And it's like, this is a gate that is barely,
never used,
hardly ever used. It's like, what is going on? And you could see where they pulled off. They never went through it with a vehicle, but they pulled off right there. And I was like, this is very odd. Why is this? And so I started doing some inquiries and nobody contacted me about it, which I can understand that as a leasee. And so I contacted the people we leased from and I said, hey, has anybody gotten a hold of you? Do you know? And they had no idea what it was. The landowner had no idea. And so I started making some calls and finding out what's going on. And finally it comes down to the point where they're doing some basic reconstruction of the towers and support systems for this power line. And they're using that as a kind of a marker. Okay, great.
Tell somebody.
Yeah. Because it's a little suspect to just find something out there in the pasture.
Right. Exactly.
Especially randomly like that.
Right. And it's in the middle of nowhere where for what purpose? And I'm like, what is going on here? So pretty soon I've got this surveyor contacting me back because I had rattled enough chains
Oh, sure.
And the more I was getting blown off, would you say
More
the
irate you might be getting.
More
Yeah.
elevated his heart rate became.
Yes.
The blood pressure and heart the beats per minute began to increase steadily.
So
or maybe exponentially.
Yeah. So here's how this guy's in this conversation. All I want to know is who, why, what's going on, how long is it going to be there, what's happening, what is the deal
just
here?
Some basic stuff.
Yeah. And at least let the landowner know.
Yeah.
As a common courtesy.
And that's my thing. I understand.
Okay.
I'm with you. Like, as a leasee, I get it. Sometimes things don't, people don't think about passing the word along, but at least the landowner, because that's a public document. You can find at the courthouse. Hey, who owns this piece of ground?
Very easily.
And they've probably got it in their own records.
Exactly.
They've got a logbook that, I'm sure.
Yeah.
So the way this was turned and twisted by this surveyor that was on the other end of the phone line was that, oh, I'm really busy and this is something, I just don't have time to contact people. And you know what? I guess you don't care about this anyway. You don't care what I have to go through. And I'm like, oh, you poor victim. Of course, that didn't set well with, Anyway, they did their business. It got removed. But you know what? No lessons were learned during that whole thing, other than I got more distrust for, some of these
and honestly,
people that have access, mandated access.
If I know there's an agreement already because it's mandated, but it should be a trespass if you do not notify the owner or make an attempt, because, the whole idea is there's a give and take there. Hey, we'll have a gate. You can come onto our property when you need to, but, you need to be a good steward of the land too.
Yeah. It's hard to legally, I think it's hard to justify that though, because they're often going to say it's an easement. So there's no such thing as trespass on easements, but
exactly.
You're right.
That's
but
exactly.
I agree with you. Yeah.
But you, with what goes on anymore out in some rural areas, who knows what X marks the spot means?
Right.
Oh yeah. Well, and especially with
people losing entire herds of sheep, cattle,
things have really changed the last 3 years.
Good dogs. What's that?
Sorry. I mean, we've had this conversation before with the change in populations since 2020.
Mm-hmm.
Like, it's changed a lot of things, and there are more people that what used to be pretty trustworthy and more communal in rural areas has become very disjointed, and you look at people sideways and you double check who they are, because you don't know who anybody is anymore. They come in and they want to do their own thing. They might just come in to find a spot just like you, kind of escape reality. And then there's also others that they're coming in to bust the whole place open and make a bunch of subdivisions and change everything and change the entire way of we see things, politics, all that. And we're like, whoa, easy there. No, I get it. It's very frustrating.
Well, and before, when you had some locals that were kind of unscrupulous, you knew who they were.
Yeah. You don't know that now.
Yeah. And now you don't know it. You just got to assume everybody is kind of has the potential, not that they would, but you got to be careful.
Instead of being
people that have moved in, don't get me wrong.
Instead of necessarily putting the right foot forward every time, you now have to kind of take a step back and be a little suspect and cautious before you go there.
Be reserved.